Hello, and either welcome or welcome back to the Jen the Libertarian podcast. If you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and Libertarian Institute. So apparently this past week was the cancellation news cycle week, because we have so many stories from this past week of people either getting canceled or attempting cancellings, and cancellings that have gone horribly wrong. So I want to go ahead and discuss some of the stories from this past week related to that, and the whole concept of cancel culture itself, and whether or not it does exist, and whether or not it is or is not a problem. So we'll go ahead and start at the obvious spot, which is the whole Shane Gillis controversy. Now, I did not know, still really do not know who this dude is, outside of the fact that he's apparently a stand-up comedian. And he was hired by Saturday Night Live to be a new cast member. So this happens, and then I don't even think it was 24 hours after the announcement that somebody had put out on the internet clips that he had done with this other comic on a podcast where he was making racially insensitive jokes about Asian people, specifically Chinese people in Chinatown in New York. And I mean, the jokes were not funny. Like, basically making fun of accents, making fun of the way they talk, called them chinks, kind of made fun of Chinatown in general. And it was all pretty much just profoundly unfunny humor to me. I mean, I guess some people find this kind of stuff amusing. I don't know. But so that all comes out. I think probably about 48 hours later, maybe not even that long, SNL fires him, no longer a cast member. And so, yeah, I guess Shane Gillis is in a canceled state right now. What happens when you're there, it's all kind of up in the air. But this was a really interesting case study for me. And one thing before I kind of get into a comparison with another case that to me is incredibly similar but ended very differently, is that Lorne Michaels, and I guess this was an official SNL statement, but he has said that Gillis was hired to appeal to conservatives, because obviously SNL has a massive liberal bias now, has ever since Trump became president, although they apparently had no problem with Trump before he became president. So there's that, but it was just this weird kind of pot shot that didn't make any sense logistically, because he was hired to be a cast member and not part of the writer's room, and cast members don't write their own material, like the writer's room writes it. So you would think that if you were trying to appeal to conservatives by hiring someone, you would hire them for the writer's room and not for the cast. So that just seemed kind of like trying to take a situation that backfired on them horribly and still try to blame it on conservatives somehow, which, thanks for reinforcing the whole idea that SNL has a massive liberal bias, although we didn't we didn't already know that already. But yeah, that was just a really weird situation to watch unfold, and then to watch it somehow still get blamed on conservatives, even though conservatives had nothing to do with this. Like, they didn't hire him. They didn't go unearth these recordings. And actually, a thing I saw online in relationship to appealing to conservatives, apparently Shane Gillis has actually made jokes about how funny it would be if Trump was assassinated at one of his pep rallies. And this was actually, as macabre as it is, actually a genuinely funny joke about what it would actually be like if Trump got assassinated at one of his rallies, which is not a very conservative thing to say, I wouldn't think. So, but at least it was a little bit of glimmer that maybe this guy does have some sort of funny humor in there somewhere. But the case I want to compare it to is that of Sarah Zhang's. And this is a controversy from last year. And I've talked about it before. The backstory here: Sarah Zhang is, and note the use of the word is and not the word was, a member of the New York Times editorial board. And when she was hired, a bunch of right-wing people went back into her Twitter history and pulled out some tweets that she had done, basically making fun of white men. Now, there was a particular really weird Twitter era there for like a good solid, I would say maybe 2 to 3 years. A lot of writers got their come up and developed Twitter followings, especially women and people of color, by making fun of white men and basically saying things like, cancel white men, all white men should die, I think white men should suffer, I love watching white men suffer, shit like that. And a lot of people got their come up from making those sorts of tweets. And again, whether they're jokes or not, first off, it's again, unfunny. Like, I don't know who laughs at that. But her situation is the exact opposite of Gillis's situation, where once all these tweets were brought back out to light, New York Times put out a statement saying, yeah, we know about the tweets. We've already talked about the tweets. We're not firing her over the tweets. Basically, get the hell over it. And to this day, she is still a member of the New York Times editorial board. So, I want to go from that and make a point about cancel culture, especially now that there are a group of people who are saying cancel culture isn't real. Cancel culture is real. The thing is, it is only real for certain people. And the people who are saying that it's not real are not the people that it will ever be real for. Like the Sarah Zhangs of the world are never going to know what cancel culture is. Clearly, because they both have, they have like institutional support and they have people that are going to back them. And so they're never going to know what it's like to be fired over a tweet, because they're never going to get fired over a tweet. So that's where I think that divide comes in. And a lot of people look at it and be like, how can you say cancel culture isn't real? Like, look at this. Like, you're saying it in the middle of canceling someone. And that's why. It's because for them, it's not and it never will be. And yes, there is a double standard. I don't know why this is still surprising to people at this stage of the game. Yeah, there's a double standard. We're not all held to the same standards. No shit, Sherlocks. Some people get protected, some people don't. It sucks. And it's worth talking about. But to say that cancel culture doesn't exist is just really ridiculous, especially over this past week. Because it's Shane Gillis was not the only person that was attempted to be canceled over this past week. Another person who was subjected to the cancel culture treatment was, surprisingly, somebody that nobody saw coming, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. Everybody's favorite leftist darling. For some reason, and I'm sure this has something to do with their elections, from what I understand, they're having elections in the next couple of weeks to see if he's going to get reelected and stuff. So there were these pictures surfaced from back in the early 2000s of Justin Trudeau in what is being politely called brownface now, because he was dressed up as an Arabian and not a black person, but I saw the pictures. That was blackface. Like, he had black shoe polish all over his face. He had his hands done, his arms done. Like, I don't know how many other body parts had the shoe polish on them. I don't want to know. But yeah, it was full on. And there's been, I think at this point, 3 actually photographed instances of Justin Trudeau in black/brown face. And so, of course, this has become a big to-do, kind of, sort of, because of the Ralph Northam scandal from earlier this year. I can't even keep track of this stuff anymore. But you guys know the governor of Virginia, who was in the picture and was either the guy in the blackface or the guy in the KKK hood. And so this just brought up that all over again. And a lot of people were making the point that Trudeau's situation is different because this did happen in like the early 2000s when he was, I believe, in his mid-20s. So it's not like he was in high school or college or anything like that. And the Arabian Nights one apparently was like a charity fundraiser. So I don't know. And Justin Trudeau's explanation has got to be one of the funniest things ever. Basically, he said, I'm just a guy that gets a little too over-enthusiastic about costumes sometimes. And it's like, yeah, Justin, we know. We've seen you get a little too over-enthusiastic about costumes. But, again, this is another example of at least an attempted canceling. Whether Justin Trudeau is going anywhere or not, I highly doubt it. Everybody seems to at this point kind of like moved on, because honestly, these kinds of controversies are just stupid. Like, okay, whatever. You put makeup on your face and you did this thing, and was it particularly insensitive? Who knows? I don't think he meant to be racially insensitive. I just think he is somebody that's very enthusiastic about costumes. But again, it's this idea. And this is another part of cancel culture that really just, it bugs me, it annoys me, because I think it's really stupid. And that's this going all the way back into somebody's way, way, way back past to try to dig up shit on them. And it's like, okay, yes, that was the early 2000s. Yes, he was in his mid-20s, but it's 2019 now, and he's older now, and the Prime Minister of Canada, and I'm sure he wouldn't go do it again today, so... yeah, it's just, it's ridiculous, and it's petty. It's really petty in a way that just, I don't understand how, like, I know I've talked about this before, and I should really get Nancy Rommelman back on the show to kind of talk about her experience about this, but I genuinely don't get trying to destroy somebody's life over petty nonsense. Like, I don't get it. Like, There's something there that I think really needs to be explored along the ideas of, do people that engage in this sort of activity of trying to cancel people understand that there is an actual like person on the other end of this, and this is a person who you're fucking with their money, you're fucking with their job, you're fucking with their personal life, like, this is doing serious damage to somebody, and it's damage that lasts long after the person who did the canceling has probably moved on, probably doesn't even think about it anymore, probably gives it not even a second thought, but the person who was canceled still has to deal with the fallout of whatever happened from that situation. So it's like, it's very disturbing to me. Like, that's just a very disturbing trend of people not being able to view people that aren't in their immediate, like, physical, personal orbit as people, but more as, like, avatars that don't really exist, and so therefore you can do whatever you want to do to someone. So, speaking of people that people seem to think that they can say and do anything to, and it's okay, Brett Kavanaugh is back in the news again. Almost a year after the confirmation hearing that was still, to me, I still say, that was the most balls out insane thing I have ever, like, personally, like, in my adult life watched happen in politics. I'm still, like, I think now that we're like a year out, I think a lot of people forget exactly just how batshit that was. And just how ugly and sordid and just nasty it got. And it really, I said it when I was covering it then, and I still stand by it, is that whole situation, that whole debacle really changed the game in a lot of ways in how people view politicians, how they view the media, how they view cancel culture itself, how they view Democrats, how they view Republicans. Like, that really just changed a lot of things for a lot of people. But Brett Kavanaugh, back in the news again, because there is a book coming out titled The Education of Brett Kavanaugh, and an excerpt from the book was published in the New York Times. As usually happens, it's like kind of like press for the book. And so they released a section of the book where there is a new allegation being made against Kavanaugh that while he was at Yale, and this is in the midst of a story about a whole bunch of other stuff about the woman who, well, allegedly this happened to. Anyway, somehow or another, I'm still not entirely understanding the logistics of how this all allegedly went down, but allegedly, Brett Kavanaugh was at a party at Yale, drunk, and somehow or another, his penis ended up in this other woman's hand. And from what I understand, I think he was blacked out drunk and for some reason did not have pants on. And so then somebody else took his penis and put it in this woman's hand, which, wouldn't that be sexual assault on Kavanaugh? Like, I thought, like, when people are blacked out drunk, you're not supposed to touch their genitalia or put it in other people's hands. So I'm just like, I'm baffled by this whole allegation. It's just like, what? Like, what the hell is going on at Yale? What are you people doing? I still don't understand. But the point of the story is, in the excerpt that was published in the New York Times, a very, very, very important detail was left out. And that is that the woman in question, to whom Brent's penis was put in her hand. I'm sorry, these are sentences that I never thought I would have to say. So, the woman who had the dick baton put in her hand, apparently here, does not remember it ever happening, does not confirm the story, does not want to talk about it, and that part is in the book. Like, the part that where they say, well, this woman can't corroborate the story, is actually in the book, was left out of the excerpt published in the New York Times. So, piece gets published, and by this point, members of the press had pretty much everybody already got their gallery copies of the book, and had already started reading it. And I think Molly Hemingway was the first person I saw on Twitter to say, whoa, wait. This is leaving out a very important chunk of the story here. And then other people started posting up like screenshots of the pages where the excluded information was included in the book. And the excuse that has been put out as to how this glaring omission just happened. Like, oops, sorry, we forgot to tell you that this is a completely unsubstantiated allegation, was that New York Times didn't want to publish the woman's name. The woman's name is published in the book. So, first off, that alone, like, okay, her name's in the book. Like, it's not like you're preserving somebody's secret identity here, people. So, her name in the book, they didn't want to put it in the piece. So they edited out the part that had her name, but in the process of editing out the part that has her name, they also edited out the part where it says that this allegation is that she doesn't even remember this. That she can't even verify that this happened to her. And it's basically sourced through 7 people, but not a single one of them was an actual eyewitness to this happening. It's people that heard about it from this person or that person, or heard it through the grapevine. And apparently, from what I gather from the piece that was published in the New York Times, I guess there were a lot of other rumors about this girl anyway, so the veracity of this is really kind of sketchy. I mean, it's beyond kind of sketchy. This is pretty much just is done at this point. Like, this story just imploded in a way that was completely nuts, but still completely predictable, because everybody, as soon as the Times ran the excerpt, everybody was like, oh my God, look, here's another allegation against Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. And everybody just went nuts. And then it was debunked. I mean, I'm like, how many times do we have to do this news cycle? Like, it hurts. It hurts how often now you have to wait 24 hours to make sure that a story is actually valid before you comment on it. Because this one clearly wasn't. But I bring up Brett Kavanaugh and this story implosion because here's the thing. And here's another thing that bothers me when people say cancel culture doesn't exist. Explain the hell to me then what happened to Brett Kavanaugh. That was cancel culture writ so large and on such a massive stage that it was nuts. Like, people forget how crazy it was. Like, this dude was accused of everything from Ford's statement that he had held her down in an inappropriate way one time, all the way up to him being accused of drugging and gang raping women. Like, that's how nuts it got. Like, I cannot overemphasize just how insane the whole situation was. And the fact that we're bringing it back up and going here again, going down this same road of, I mean, Brett Kavanaugh is in his mid-50s at this point. Why are we talking about shit that he did in high school and college, even if every single story was 1000% true? I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, what is anybody supposed to do with that? Are you supposed to be canceled because of a thing that you did in high school or college when you're in your mid-50s? And the funniest thing about it is, even after this story just completely went sideways, the authors of the book still did, like, the TV press tour, which to me, I was like, I would have pulled the hell out of all that and kept my head down and waited for this whole thing to blow over. But I did catch the interview that they did on The View. And it went so badly for these authors that even they had to retreat all the way up onto the hill of saying, once you got past high school and college, we could find no allegations of any kind of misconduct whatsoever against Kavanaugh. And in fact, he has gone out of his way to promote and hire females for his staff, and that his judicial record's actually pretty good. Like, I mean, and I am sure it wasn't for lack of looking to see if any of these female staffers might have any kind of story whatsoever to tell about Brett Kavanaugh. And they found nothing past things that may or may not have happened in high school or college. I don't. Like, I can't. I don't understand. And as far as cancel culture ruining people's lives, that could have ruined Brett Kavanaugh's life. But, and here's the thing. Again, the reason why Brett Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court justice right now is due to a little theory that he proved correct with some institutional assistance, which is that if you have the stomach for it, if you can gut it out, you can ride out a canceling. Now, I say this was also with institutional help because Trump was asked several times to rescind Kavanaugh's nomination, and Trump was just like, nope, that's my guy. If you don't want him in there, you're going to have to vote him down. So he did have Trump backing him, but at the same time, he also didn't take himself out of the running. He stayed in. He said, no, we're not doing this. I'm not leaving over this. I'm not taking myself out of the equation. I'm not canceling myself. And ultimately, he was confirmed onto the Supreme Court. However you may happen to feel about that is your business, but it does show that you can, even as batshit insane of a canceling attempt as that was, you can ride it out. You can beat it. Like, it's not a death sentence if you are a certain person. And what helped out Kavanaugh was that, obviously, Trump backing him, but also just having that kind of position to be able to stand your ground, which not everybody has. So there is the question of, how much clout do you have? How much leverage do you have in this situation as to whether you stay or go? And I always recommend people stay. Like, you can ride this out if it is at all possible for you to do. But yeah, that is our week in cancellings, both successful and unsuccessful. So I want to move on from that to my thoughts on people reacting to cancel culture. And there's two camps. One camp has, unfortunately, as far as I could tell, way more people in it than the other. And that is this idea that, okay, well, if they're going to play this game, I'm going to play this game too. Like, if the left is going to do cancel culture, then we're going to do cancel culture too. And we're going to try to hold them to their standards and try to cancel them the same way they cancel us. And it's just like, first off, that's not going to work. We've already established there are double standards here. You're not going to hold them to their standards because they're not going to hold themselves to their standards. So, nice try. But on a larger, more philosophical level, the answer to this isn't for everybody to engage in the behavior. It's for nobody to engage in the behavior. Nobody should be participating in cancel culture. It's sick. It's insane. It's petty. It ruins people's lives. Just don't do it. Like, just don't do that. Don't be hurtful towards somebody else for no good reason. And all of this is for no good reason. Like, even if you thought Gillis's jokes weren't funny, okay, they're not funny. Whatever. I don't understand ruining people's lives over this stuff. Even if you think it is offensive, even if you thought it was point blank racist, okay, so don't watch SNL anymore. I mean, I don't understand ruining people's lives over this. I don't understand bringing up pictures of Justin Trudeau in blackface from almost 20 years ago. Because again, what's the point? Why are you trying to ruin this dude's life? Why are you trying to keep him from getting elected again? And as far as Brett Kavanaugh is concerned, I think I've said, when I covered it last year, when I just covered it now, I think I've pretty much said my piece on Brett Kavanaugh, which is that, I mean, this whole thing, if this could have ended so badly. Like, this is one of those that just, I'm still kind of blown away that the whole Brett Kavanaugh story happened and is still happening. And I don't even know what to say about that. But the answer is just stop trying to get people canceled. And especially if you're really going to have a problem with somebody, an honest to God problem with somebody, can it be something that this person did in, I don't know, the past 2 years? Does it have to be something from like decades ago? That's what tells me that it's petty. Because it's not shit that happened recently. It's shit that happened ages and ages and ages ago. Like, what possible offense are you taking to this right now? Honestly. I don't get it. So, that is kind of where I want to leave off on that. And just, for everybody who thinks that the answer is for everybody to engage in crappy behavior, no. The answer is for nobody to engage in crappy behavior. Everybody stop it. I see they do it. I don't care. Just because somebody else acts like an asshole doesn't mean that you have to too. You are still in control of how you act and how you present yourself, regardless of how other people want to act and present themselves. Don't lower yourself to somebody else's level. But the last point I want to make before we wrap this up is a point that I see a lot of people make a lot. And that is that the canceled sometimes land on their feet. Sometimes. I want to emphasize that because, first off, not everybody does. Not everybody is lucky enough or savvy enough or has enough clout or has a big enough platform to take that experience and pivot to something that is either positive or a new career or a new revenue stream. Not everybody has that ability. And so I think when people point out like, these comics, they're canceled and then they get specials and people get book deals and they become famous and blah, 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 blah. That's not the point. The point is nobody should have to go through that in the first place. Like, nobody who's got their come up off of being canceled should have had to go through that in the first place. Even if they did end in a good spot, like, that was still a shitty thing to go through, you know? Like, that still cost that person a job, probably cost them friends, might have even cost them family members, cost them standing in their community, cost them standing in their industry. Like, it's just an awful thing to do. And it's not just because a couple of people have managed to leverage that into something else doesn't mean that we should ignore cancel culture or just brush it off and be like, they'll be fine. Like, because not everybody is. I mean, I personally know people who aren't fine after this. Like, they are, but they aren't. And it's, even if you do manage to land on your feet, it changes you, it scars you, you lose certain parts of yourself through that process. And it's just not okay. So, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So, as always, if you did make it this far, thank you. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and Libertarian Institute. Take care, and until next time.